Tonight, we descend into the forgotten temples. Open tombs sealed with claw marks and unearth the secrets scratched into stone. The myth is not what you think, and the claws were not always kind. It's day 13 of 30 days of studying the masters. Today's master is Arthur Rackham. I'm painting along to Aragon. Son of Fire, Dragon Rider, from Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Powlin. While that's a massive oversimplification, it is true that cats held a special place in Egyptian religion. The story is about a man named Camusit, who is torn over his love for a married woman named He liked to draw cats, owls, and rabbits, often portraying them with human-like qualities. We've got our main character, Camusit, kneeling before Bastit's altar. He's got a scroll in his hands and a rather intense look on his face. In the background, we can see part of a temple with columns and hieroglyphics. There's a lot going on in this piece, so let's start with the main character. Camusit is dressed in a long white robe, typical of Egyptian priests. His left hand is holding up a papyrus scroll, and his right hand is resting on an altar in front of him. The gesture of his hands shows his submission and devotion. Now, this guy isn't your average priest. He's got a smoldering intensity about him. His eyes are downcast, but they've got a fire in them. It's like he's wrestling with some inner turmoil, you know? That forbidden love thing. And while his drawings are detailed and precise, they also have a looseness and informality to them. She's depicted as a woman with a cat's head, sitting regally on a stone throne. The hieroglyphics on the walls hint at the ancient Egyptian culture and beliefs. Overall, the composition is just perfect. The figures are placed in a way that leads your eye around the painting, and the use of light and shadow creates a sense of depth. Her expression is calm and serene, and her eyes are mesmerizing. The cool colors are used to create contrast and to highlight certain areas of interest. I hope you enjoyed this quick look into the world of Arthur Rackham. Remember, becoming a better artist is a journey, not a destination. And the best part is that you get to be the architect of that journey. So, keep creating, keep learning, and above all, keep believing in your own artistic journey. See you tomorrow. She's wearing a necklace with a scarab beetle pendant, and her ears are adorned with jewelry. Behind her, there's a winged sun disk, symbolizing her connection to the sun god Ra. The attention to detail in the costume and props is just amazing. You can feel the texture of the fabric and the weight of the jewelry. He confesses his forbidden love to a priestess, and she tells him that the only way to escape his guilt. He does this by cutting open his hand and letting the blood trickle into a small bowl. Then he walks barefoot 12 miles to a crossroads where he leaves the offering and waits to be taken by Beth. Soon after, a black cat approaches him, bites him on the wrist, and then disappears. Now, knowing he has been chosen, he returns home where he slowly becomes ill until finally he dies. The end. Cats were associated with the goddess Bastet, who had the head of a woman and the body of a lion. Bastet represented protection of the home and family, fertility and motherhood, and even healing. Egyptians kept pet cats, mummified them when they died, and even built temples in their honor. The most famous temple was at Bubastis, where every year there was a festival in her honor with attendees coming from all over Egypt. These festivals, music, dancing, and maybe even some human sacrifices. Rackham was heavily influenced by Egyptian mythology and motifs. Now, we've all seen the memes about cats being worshipped as gods in ancient Egypt. Now, this painting is from a story about Bastet, called The Cat, Who Goes to the Crossroads by Kate Ellis. He also drew inspiration from everyday life. Now let's have a look at the painting. Now let's focus on Bast. The background is filled with symbolism as well. The temple behind Bast represents the sacred space where the story takes place. One thing that stands out is the color palette. Rackham uses a lot of warm colors, reds, oranges, and yellows, to create a vibrant and festive atmosphere. Well, that's it for today. Well, hello there. Welcome to my channel. It's me. This is my channel. You may know me from social media where I share folklore, mythology, legends, and folklore. And now I'm excited to share some stories here as well. So today I've chosen to share this story about Bastet, the Egyptian goddess whose touch could purify and kill. Mummified cats, their bodies wrapped with more care than most warriors, were buried in sacred vaults beside alabaster statues of Bastet, thousands of them stacked like offerings in the darkness. Beneath temples, some say entire estates fell into ruin from the cost of a single feline burial. But to deny a cat her sacred rest was to invite ruin upon the house. A creature who chose her moment, her victims, her servants. Without pity, without wrath, just order. Divine and silent. The kind of justice no man could escape, and few could understand. Because what is a god, if not the one who sees us even when we hide? And in Egypt, that god had whiskers and watched us from the shadows. Thank you for watching. There was the case of Harkuf the merchant, who, in his arrogance, kicked a stray cat from his path while unloading goods near the Nile. Witnesses claimed the cat let out no sound, only stared. That same night, his youngest son drowned in shallow water. His crops failed within the month. His house caught fire. And in the final account of his life, found scribbled in haste on the back of a cargo manifest, "No cats remain in the village." But I feel her. She watches. These stories are usually centered around a main character, but this one will center around an idea. They would appear in dreams, their eyes eclipses, their fur made of mist. To be visited by Bastet's form in sleep was both honor and warning. Some would wake with scratch marks upon their backs, others with a single white hair in their mouth. There were those who claimed they had dreamt of drowning, not in water, but in fur. Priests interpreted these dreams with great care, for Bastet had two faces, one of music, dance, and protection. When she became enraged, she was Sekhmet, the lioness, bringer of plague. It was said that during the reign of Pharaoh a drought struck after a nobleman joked during the festival of cats that he preferred dogs. By morning, his throat had swelled shut. By week's end, 7 homes were struck with fever. And still, people worshipped. The patrons of Bast would be terrified, not of her, but of what her presence meant. She knew the hidden sins, the kiss stolen in the shadows, the envy coiled beneath smiles. She punished, yes, but she also purified. A new ritual emerged among the devout, the offering of flesh. Those who had committed grave sins would kneel in the temple of Bastet, with arms bared, hoping a sacred cat would choose to strike. Not all were touched. Those who were considered it absolution. If they died clean. One man, a former temple guard, named Penehesi, was known to have watched over the cat mummies. It was rumored he once stole from the burial vaults a single gold clasp from the wrappings of a noble cat. Weeks later, he was found at the temple gates, weeping, shirtless, covered in shallow claw marks across his chest. He fasted for 40 days. He shaved his head and wore no sandals until his death. His final words were recorded on a clay tablet. She forgave me. To worship something so delicate, so silent, is to place one's life in the hands of shadows. And when the gods choose to walk the earth on velvet paws, their anger is never loud. It is precise, personal, and irreversible. In the village of Purbast, not far from the sacred city of Bubastis, there lived a midwife named Tia. She had delivered 63 children, sewn shut 42 corpses, and whispered the names of the old gods in both joy and dread. She knew what it meant when a child was born beneath a cat's cry. It meant the soul would be watched, either guarded or claimed. Not because they hissed or bit, but because they knew, she would say with eyes clouded from years of smoke and dust. A cat sees what even Anubis forgets. There was one child, small born blue, not breathing. The mother, already slipping from blood loss, begged Tia to save it. As the midwife pressed her fingers to the infant's chest, the room fell silent. From the doorway came a rustle. A slender cat, silver-striped, sat and stared. The child cried. The mother died. Tia understood then. Life given, life taken. A choice had been made. She would find small paw prints near her door after that. Not every night, just when something changed in the wind. She began offering small bowls of milk laced with rose petals. Not for nourishment, but as tribute. She feared judgment. She feared that one night the cat would come not to observe, but to collect. And she was not alone in her dread. Among the elite, cat funerals were conducted with more ceremony than those of servants or scribes. What made the fear so potent? A lion roared, a jackal howled, but a cat whispered. Because to worship Bastet was not merely to avoid death, it was to invite clarity. This is what made Bastet both adored and feared. She was not cruel. She was inevitable. There was a time when Egypt burned with conquest, when pharaohs sent their armies beyond the Red Desert, and cities bowed beneath the scent of lotus and war. And even then, amid the chaos of battle and the clash of chariots, the cat remained untouched. It speaks of a soldier named Morenra, a man of valor whose spear had pierced 20 foes, and whose shield bore the mark of Horus, who longed to be clawed, bitten, marked, not out of repentance, but for ascension. These were not the guilty, but the hungry. Queen Anknes, Neferibri high priestess and daughter of a pharaoh, was said to keep a chamber within her palace lit only by oil and clawed with scratch marks along the walls. With the boundary between the mortal world and what lies beyond, but above him, in a raised alcove of stone, as if to watch. Her eyes were inlaid with lapis lazuli, her claws tipped in bronze, her name inscribed upon a pendant seshmet, she who waits. The truth becomes clear. The cat was not merely animal. Not all who crossed it returned. And just as priests used feathered fans to cool the brows of kings, cats were allowed to rest atop the chests of the dead. That is why, in certain tombs, you will find small sarcophagi placed beside the grand, tiny coffins of cedar or gold, filled not with treasure, but with curled bodies, preserved in eternal sleep. Cats mummified with such care that even their whiskers were painted onto their wrappings, because in death they continued to serve, continued to judge. No servants were allowed to enter. Cats came and went freely, and when asked about the chamber, she would only whisper where she speaks. Some said the queen was mad. Others believed she was blessed, the chosen ear of Bastet, who had no need of oracles. On the night of her death, every cat in the palace vanished. For 2 days, they were not seen, and when they returned, it was to sit upon her tomb, unmoving, silent, the spiritually starved. They gathered in secret beneath moonlight, painting their faces with soot and oils. Some war collars fashioned from copper and bone. They prowled temple ruins, imitating feline movement, fasting until their ribs cast shadows upon stone. The scrolls mention them rarely with caution. One high priest of Bubastis, Amenhotep, referred to them as those who chase death wearing whiskers. He wrote of a night where 12 of them gathered at the edge of a sacred grove. One by one, they slit their palms, dripping blood into a carved alabaster bowl. A single white cat emerged from the papyrus reeds, approached the youngest, a girl of 16, and raked its claws across her cheek. She died the next morning, eyes open, lips smiling. Her body was never buried. The hallowed took her away, claiming she had been claimed, ascended, purified. Whether this was madness, but from that night forward, a statue of Bastet was found shattered, replaced by a crude idol. Feline, yes, but fanged and hollow-eyed. During a siege against desert raiders, his tent was invaded. Not by the enemy, but by a temple cat, separated from her sanctuary. In the confusion, startled and exhausted, Morena struck the creature with the flat of his blade. It shield fled into the dunes. 3 nights later, as the siege ended in triumph, Morena was found dead. No wound, no poison. His face was frozen in horror, and upon his chest, in dried blood, the mark of 5 claws. The priests declared him cursed. His name was removed from the victory stele. His body was buried facing away from the Nile, denied the sunrise. His family paid penance for 7 years, offering grain and incense to the temple of Bast. They were emissaries. To strike them was to strike her. And no soul dared such defiance without consequences that rippled beyond death. Warriors might fall by spear or flame, but to harm a feline, even by accident. One such tale survives in fragments, etched onto limestone now housed in the ruins of but not all feared the wrath. Some desired it. As madness does when cloaked in religion, there were those who yearned to be chosen. This obsession with divine suffering echoed through time. Even within the royal courts, rumors brewed. In this way, cats were not merely revered, they were trusted with secrets, with souls. One tomb, belonging to a court musician named Menka, was found with a single feline guardian. The sun may have set on the Egyptian empire, but the worship of Bast continues. For 2,000 years, she has watched humanity change and grow. When armies could no longer protect them, when temples crumbled and pharaohs became puppets, they sought salvation not from the sun god or the falcon lord, but from the feline queen of silence. And thus the rights of the claw were born. Merchants refused to sell near temple cats, even if they blocked entire stalls. Children were taught to greet every feline with a hand to the heart and a whisper of mistress. But his theory, whispered in shadows, lingers, that to be killed by a cat was not death. It was recruitment, and when a cat meowed at nothing, it was said a spirit was present, or perhaps a god. Even thieves, hardened by desperation, avoided homes where cats stood watch. One tale tells of a burglar named Bakari, who entered a nobleman's estate during a sandstorm. He slit the throats of 3 guards, avoided 6 traps, and stole 20 amulets. But as he reached for the final chest, a small tabby leaped from a column and scratched his arm. He fled, laughing. 3 days later, he was found outside a temple, blind, covered in fever sores, screaming about golden eyes that see beneath the skin. The priests burned his body with myrrh. No rites were given because when death came from the goddess, it was not mourned. It was respected. First as a lion huntress, then a goddess of music and dancing, then a protector of children and mothers. One, named Jedhor, spent 40 years studying cat burials. He cataloged over 2,000 mummies, tracing patterns in their placement, in the oils used, in the alignment of their tiny bodies. He began to see what others did not. That certain cats were buried with specific glyphs. Ones rarely used, ones meant for oracles and divine messengers. He theorized that these were not simply sacred animals, but vessels, carriers of will. He proposed, in a scroll now lost to fire, that when Bastet wished to act upon the mortal plane, that those killed or marked by cats had not been punished or blessed at random, but deliberately selected, chosen to carry a message back through the veil. He died mysteriously. His home was found undisturbed, but every scroll, every tablet had been shredded. Even his corpse bore no signs of violence, save one, a single deep cut across his throat. In the corner of the room sat a cat, unmoving, watching, and then she was gone. Finally, a bringer of death, whose touch could fell a man before he knew what struck him. Her cults spread through the land, each more extreme than the last. But by the final dynasties, when Egypt had grown weary under the weight of its own eternity, when Ptolemies whispered in Greek but still burned incense to gods with animal heads, the cult of Bastet did not fade. As the empire fractured and Rome's shadow lengthened across the Nile, the faithful turned inward. There are scarce records, torn pages, broken carvings, stories passed in hushed tones by desert nomads. But the pattern emerges, an invitation, always whispered. A journey to a hidden shrine beyond the edge of light, and a test, not of courage, but of surrender. One such tale speaks of Nezareth, a widow who had lost all her husband to plague, her sons to the sea. She wandered the markets in linen, already stained with dust, speaking to no one. Until one night, she followed a cat down an alley that did not exist by day. At its end, she found a door of black stone. No handle, no inscription. She passed through or was let in. What happened inside, she never told. But when she emerged, days later, she claimed she had seen Bastet, not in statue or dream, but as flame-given flesh. She spoke of eyes that saw through centuries, of a voice like purring thunder, of pain that cleansed. And then she vanished. Some say she walked into the Nile and did not sink. Others claim she became a priestess in some forgotten temple, where cats still guard the doors and human speech. But others, the more cynical, believe she died that night, and what returned was no longer. This fear, this AR became part of everyday life, but not all who sought her were fools or fanatics. Some were scholars. The scribes who arrived later burned what little remained, claiming it was dangerous heresy. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And so we return to the question, whispered through tombs, etched in crumbling stone, and passed from one trembling mouth to another across centuries. What does it mean to be chosen by the claw? In most of the world, a freak incident, a moment of misfortune. But not here. Not in Egypt, not in the shadow of the Black Land where the gods still breathed through beasts. An Englishman who excavated a forgotten chamber beneath Bubastis in 1906, among shattered statues and crumbling scrolls. He uncovered a black urn sealed with wax and copper. She was balance. She was the blade wrapped in velvet, the shadow in sunlight, the kiss of death that came not in fire, but in fur. And those she touched, were transformed. Not always in body, sometimes only in mind, sometimes only in fear, but never untouched. And this is the truth. They hid in poetry, in prayer, in pottery fragments buried beneath centuries of sand. That to be slain by a cat was not a curse, a signal that the soul had been weighed and found suitable for silence, for sacrifice, for something greater than breath. Against all protests, he pried it open. Inside, they say, was not gold, not jewels, as though something ancient still peers out from behind that gaze, something that remembers incense and blood and the 1,000 prayers offered in terror and awe. So the next time a cat curls beside you, silent and watching, ask yourself, what does she see? Whom has she come for? But a single mummified paw, and beneath it, a small bronze tablet inscribed with only 2 hieroglyphs. Return soon. A small injury. Absurd. Really. From a stray cat. He bandaged it. Within a week, he was fevered, delirious, speaking fluent Middle Egyptian. He spoke of the second mouth, of the door with no horizon, of fur that becomes flame. He died before dawn. His assistant buried the urn. sealed the chamber. No one returned. And the veil between life and what lies beyond was thinner than a papyrus reed. In Egypt, to be scratched, bitten, or slain by a cat was to be judged worthy. Not even in the eyes of Pharaoh, but in the eyes of something far older, far colder, and far more intimate. The feline saw what no priest could confess. She knew the unspoken rot, the hunger that masqueraded as piety, the lust that lingered after prayer. She knew, and she did not forgive. She acted. That is why the myths persisted long after the temples crumbled. Why even when Roman sandals defiled the altar and Christian bells replaced chants, some still left bowls of milk at night. Some still cut their palms beneath the moon. Some still listened, not for the voice of the gods, but for the soft pad of paws, approaching in silence. Even today, in the villages that sit half-sunk beside the Nile, old women place silver coins on their windowsills when their hearts are heavy, not for wealth, but for the watching. They say cats still come, not all of them mortal. There is one tale, modern, but old enough to be worn smooth, of an archaeologist, because those who remember, truly remember, understand that Bastet was never simply a goddess of joy and music, of hearth and home. Perhaps it is why, even now, when we look into a cat's eyes, we feel something stir, not affection, not comfort, but recognition. We call them pets. We laugh at their moods. But the ancients, they saw something else. A watcher, a judge, a messenger wrapped in fur. And in the eyes of Bastet's chosen creature, they saw themselves as prey. Perhaps that's why, even now, when a cat stares at us from across the room, unmoving, a fear older than fire. If this story opened a door for you, tell us, what else do you think they've hidden beneath the sands? Leave your thoughts below. And if you want to follow the footprints of forgotten gods and forbidden history, subscribe to Dungeon of History, where the past never dies. It just waits.